Have you ever just stopped and wondered what makes our planet, a living planet, a breathing world? Well, today we're going to get into it. We're taking a deep dive into the natural resources and the incredible cycles that power everything, from the air we breathe to the water that connects all life.
So yeah, what is it? What makes Earth so special? What's the secret machinery running behind the scenes that allows for this incredible diversity of life all around us? It really all boils down to one absolutely critical concept.
And that concept is the biosphere. Honestly, the best way to think about it is as the planet's living skin. It's this amazing zone where everything happens. It's where the rock, the water, and the air all meet and interact to create the perfect conditions for life to just take off. All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at the planet's living skin. Then we'll get into its core systems, the air and water. After that, we'll explore nature's brilliant recycling programs. And finally, we'll touch on what happens when those systems start to break down.
Okay, let's get right into it, our planet's skin. To really get a handle on the biosphere, you've got to break it down into its three main parts. And it's actually pretty simple when you lay it out. You've got the lithosphere. That's all the rock and the land. Then there's the atmosphere, which is that huge blanket of air all around us. And finally, the hydrosphere, all the water on the planet. It's the constant dynamic dance between these three that makes everything else possible.
So let's start with that blanket of air, the atmosphere. It's not just empty space up there. It's this incredibly complex system that controls our climate and, obviously, gives us the very air we need to survive, breath by breath.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. Take a look at what the air is actually made of. We all tend to think about oxygen, right? But look at how small that slice of the pie really is. The vast majority of our atmosphere is something else entirely.
Get this, a whopping 78% of the air is nitrogen. Not oxygen, not carbon dioxide, nitrogen. Now, I want you to keep that number in your head because it sets up this fascinating puzzle that nature had to solve, and we're going to get to that in just a bit.
And the atmosphere also gives us wind. This is a perfect example of how it works. I mean, if you've ever felt that amazing cool breeze at the beach on a hot day, you've felt this in action. It's all driven by a super simple principle. Land heats up and cools down way faster than water. That temperature gap creates a pressure difference, and boom, that's wind. It's a massive planet-wide engine running on basic physics.
Okay, let's shift gears to the next major system, the hydrosphere. All the water. Look, if the atmosphere is the breath of the world, then water is its circulatory system. It connects everything.
We all learned about the water cycle in school, right? Evaporation, condensation, rain. But the part we don't always focus on is its job as a planet-wide transportation network. As that water flows over the land and down through rivers, it's picking up dissolved minerals and nutrients and carrying them all the way to the sea for marine life to use. It's truly the ultimate connector between the land and the ocean.
The source material we're looking at calls water a wonder liquid, and it's not exaggerating. I mean, every single process happening inside your body right now at this cellular level is happening in water. It's the universal solvent, it's a transporter. Let's be honest, the bottom line is that water is what decides where life can and cannot exist on this planet. Period.
All right, now we're heading into the engine room of the planet, the great biogeochemical cycles. Just think of these as nature's absolutely ingenious recycling programs for the basic building blocks of life itself. We're talking nitrogen, carbon, and oxygen.
So remember that puzzle I mentioned earlier? Here it is. The air is jam-packed with nitrogen, and life needs it for things like proteins and DNA. But here's the catch. In its gas form, it's completely useless to most living things. So, how does life get its hands on this stuff?
Well, nature came up with two incredible solutions. First, you've got the raw power of lightning, which literally zaps and cracks open nitrogen molecules, letting them form oxides that can dissolve in rain and fall to the earth. And second, and this is the big one, you have these tiny bacteria in the soil and on plant roots that do the heavy lifting, fixing that nitrogen into a usable form like nitrates.
It's amazing.
Next up, carbon. A really easy way to think about the carbon cycle is like the planet taking a giant breath. Plants inhale carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, turning that carbon into food. And then all life, including us, exhales CO2 through respiration. It's this beautiful, balanced exchange. Although human activities like burning fossil fuels have been adding a whole lot more to that exhale.
And that brings us perfectly to oxygen. We use it for breathing, for burning things, but what puts it back? Well, there's really only one major process that pumps oxygen back into the atmosphere on a huge scale. and that's photosynthesis. It's the direct result of the carbon cycles inhale. They're two sides of the same coin.
So we've got these elegant, self-regulating systems, right? But what happens when we throw them out of balance? This is when the warning lights on our planetary dashboard really start to flash.
For example, when we burn fossil fuels, we release harmful stuff like oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, and the effects are direct. This leads to things like respiratory problems, that thick smog that chokes cities and reduces visibility, and even acid rain, which can damage entire ecosystems and even corrode buildings and statues.
And remember all that extra CO2 we're adding to the carbon cycle? Well, when we pump too much of it into the atmosphere, it basically acts like we're wrapping a thicker and thicker blanket around the Earth. That's the greenhouse effect. The atmosphere traps more of the sun's heat than it should, and that leads to a gradual rise in the planet's average temperature. There's another critical part of our atmospheric shield, and that's the ozone layer. Its job is to absorb harmful ultraviolet radiation from the sun. You know, the discovery of that hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica years ago? That was a massive wake-up call, showing us just how fragile these protective systems can be. So, here's the takeaway. The source material points out that tiny organisms like lichens are super sensitive indicators of pollution. If you see them thriving, it's a good sign. But if they start to disappear from an area, it's a clear signal, kind of like the canary in a coal mine. Which really leaves us with one final, big question to think about. If these natural alarms are going off, what exactly is our planet trying to tell us?